Hello, and welcome to All About Hopkinton, an original HCAM series designed to introduce you to the people and organizations that make our community the great place that it is. Sitting in for Mary Arnott, I'm Jim Cousins. I am honored to be sitting here talking to the people and organizations who dedicate their time and energy to Hopkinton. Joining me today is our town clerk, Connor Deegan, who will catch us up with all the latest. And I do have to say that my unofficial subtitle for this episode is Catching Up with Connor. And at some point, you should have a show called that.
I really should. I love the alliteration of it. And now I have to give you credit, though, too.
That's okay. Executive producer is all I ask.
Okay, that's fair.
All right.
But thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. There's a lot that's been going on. So the first thing I want to talk about is, of course, new town hall. And what was it like at South Street, and what was it like coming back to town hall? Because I just can't imagine what it must be like to just pick up your entire office and move to a new location.
So it's definitely been difficult, on my office, but as well as everyone else who's in town hall. As anyone knows who's moving from a house to a new house or moving their office, it's stressful, especially when you're just uplifting everything, throwing it into boxes, and hoping you can try to get everything back up and running for the residents who want to come in and make sure that everything is still being given 100% service. So and a lot of it's still in transition. We're still trying to figure out where things are going to be going now with some of the new layout that's in the building, and it's up to par of where we can run the whole organization again back to kind of as it was.
Now, so your office, you're like the keeper of the records, and you have all this historical information. Did you have access to that, or how often do you have to utilize that in your day-to-day work with the residents?
So I utilize my my records, especially my older historical records, almost every day. When we were originally leaving town hall last year, we didn't have a solid date on when we were going to be getting back. So, and we didn't have anywhere really to store a lot of the older records, the ones that go back to the founding and incorporation of the town.
Yeah.
So it was decided that a lot of those things should just be kept in the vault. So I locked the vaults, and I'd still make at least weekly pilgrimages through a construction site at my own risk to make sure that I could get a lot of these records, because it doesn't stop with the requests, and I would just have to tell people, I'm going to be going on Friday after I close the office, and then I'll get that to you by Monday at the latest.
Wow.
So it was definitely more of a challenge doing it from South Street than doing it from when we were over at the police department.
Yeah.
But it's nice to be back just for that alone. It's one of those things you don't realize how much you miss it until it's gone, and then the record requests start piling up.
Yeah.
But one of the things that didn't change was the location of my office because of those vaults.
Okay.
Because the vault's on a solid column in the building, and so my office was kind of built around it. So they just ended up leaving my office pretty much the way it was. There's some slight difference in dimensions, but that's really about it.
How cool is it that you actually have vaults as part of your job?
It's awesome. I'll tell you that right now. Anyone who hasn't had a chance to take a look at these vaults, they're all, as far as I'm concerned, I'm the protector of them, but it belongs to the public. People should feel free to come by and take a look and see some of the history that has gone to this town. We're such an old town that you can see where things switched over from being like in old tax ledgers, from being paid from pounds sterling to the order of the king, and then switches over to dollars.
Wow.
It's just incredible seeing those transitions.
Wow. That actually would be like really cool for Catching Up with Connor to bring in things and talk about that, because the stuff is just fascinating. We actually just had our folks, we have a contractor that helps us do record restoration and preservation. And we were going through the vault and trying to look for what's high priority, what needs to get restored. And we stumbled across one book that I didn't know was there. And it was a log of contagious diseases
from the turn of the century, right at the end of 1800 into the beginning of 1900.
Wow.
And it was incredible. It had a list. It was clearly before they really cared about privacy, because it was a list of all of the residents who had an infectious disease and which disease they had.
Really?
Yes.
Wait, we don't keep those anymore?
Apparently not, but I found things like, I love finding things like that. You find sometimes travel journals from tax collectors when they would be going door to door to get your taxes.
Yeah. Wow. Now, do you have mechanical systems keeping the humidity or temperature, or is it all just sealed?
So the basement vault itself it's in a basement. So it can get damp. So I have a dehumidifier down there to maintain some level of dryness, so that we don't have to keep restoring these records more and more often.
Right.
Our upstairs one stays pretty much the same as the rest of the building. It stays pretty dry for the most part, as long as no one leaves the windows open all week.
Right.
So it's typically pretty well protected, and
Okay.
so we haven't really had to worry about that. It's stuff to look into for the future. I know we've been looking for potentially doing fire suppression in the vault without water, which was a discussion that had happened at one point. Someone had said we should put sprinklers in the vault, and I said absolutely not.
Right.
Especially after we just had this flood, it's like they're not foolproof systems. So they can fail.
So you get two vaults. You got one down in the basement, one on the first floor. Couple hundred years worth of records keeping there.
Yeah.
How is it? Are you topped off yet? Are you have enough room for the next 100 years?
We definitely still have room for more of the somewhat ancient records, so to speak. And as we continue to restore them, we still have room, and I still maintain ways to find more space.
Okay.
It'll probably be eventually making it so that some of the more bulky items have to be moved around a little bit. Could be something as simple as like finding a new locked closet for where the boxes go to hold the voting machines. It's not exactly as sensitive, but it's good to make sure they're in at least a closed off area.
Right.
So, finding something for that might be one thing that would then clear up a whole bunch of extra space.
Yeah.
Little things like that.
And is it important or mandated that you have the physical like paper, or is it something that you scan and you can keep electronically?
So I do both. When I go for my restorations, I make sure that they're all scanned as well, so that we can have everything as a PDF document, which makes it a lot easier for people to access when they're looking for these records.
Right.
But for many records, it's required the original paper document be kept. And once a document reaches the age of 100, then regardless, it's then the property of the town clerk, and the town clerk is required to maintain the record. Because at that point, it's a historical document, whether or not it's useful. So there are some records that we're required to then keep an eye on and restore that aren't useful anymore, and probably never will be. Don't have even viable information in them. But some of them might be interesting. But
but just because they lasted, then that's it.
Yep.
You own them. I could talk for about records for it. It's so interesting.
So could I, trust me.
However, so what else is coming up? Now, I know that when this show airs, we've just passed a date for registering.
Yep.
But we have primaries coming up.
Yep. So we have the September primary coming up. It'll be on September 4th, which is the day after Labor Day, for some of you who are familiar with your calendars at the moment. A lot of people, I'm guessing, will probably be just getting back from vacations. They might even still have them going on. School will be starting for a lot of people, so there's going to be a lot going on at that time of year.
Yeah.
So even though we've passed the registration deadline by the time this is aired, which would be on Wednesday, August 15th, there's still time for people who are registered and already set to make sure that they can get their ballot cast by either getting to the polls, or if they can't make it, then there's actually a different deadline for the absentee ballot applications.
Okay.
To either have it mailed or to come vote in office. And so that's because of the holiday on Monday. Typically it would be at noon the day before the actual election date that you'd have to have it in.
Yep.
So instead, it will be at 5 o'clock on the Friday before.
Okay.
So we'll be open late on the Friday before the election. And so if anyone needs to get in before that, or even over the course of the week, feel free to swing by and we'll get you all sorted out. If you need to cast your absentee ballot, we have them available. So there's a lot of actually contested races on the ballots this year too.
Okay. So what are the opportunities to vote? Obviously, on the election day, you go down to the middle school and you can cast your ballot. You can also do an absentee ballot if you're not going to be around that day. Is there another way that you can vote?
So for the primary, no. Those
Okay.
are the two methods of which you can cast your vote.
Okay.
When we do come up to the November election, for the state election, because it's a biennial state election, the law also includes early voting, which that will be for the 2 weeks prior to the election.
Okay.
And that will be likely held again at Town Hall, where we did it the last time in 2016. And I don't think I've seen any changes to the regulations on it yet. So otherwise, it'll probably be just about the same.
Okay. So I'm sure I'm not telling you anything new, but they just passed a law about automatic registration. Give us the skinny on that.
So essentially, before, most places that you could actually so the RMV is one of the agencies that's currently doing the automatic voter registration.
Okay.
Before, you could register to vote at the RMV, and it would then just send your affidavit of voter registration electronically to my office.
Okay.
Now, you will automatically be added to the rolls based on changing of your address, and it won't be an opt-in option. It'll be an opt-out option.
Okay.
So you'll have to specifically say you don't want to be added to the voter rolls.
Oh, I see.
Rather than the other way around, where with the RMV form, it was just a way to try and help you, if you're changing your address, update your voter registration.
So how do you fall off the rolls? If you don't vote for a certain period of time, aren't you removed?
So it's actually not based on how often you vote. You can go for 30 years and not vote, and you might never be taken off the rolls.
Which is not recommended, let me just say.
I don't recommend that. I recommend going every single election, which we have a lot more than people think.
Yeah.
So really, it's based on response to the census.
Okay.
If people don't respond to the census every year, and we have no other way of knowing they're there, we try to send them notices to let them know. And if you end up going an entire 2 state election cycles with no activity at the polls to let us update you, no response to your census, no response to our confirmations, anything, then you'll be removed because it'll be assumed that you've moved and just not informed us. So 2 state election cycles means takes at least 4 years.
Okay.
So there's also people who haven't told us they've moved, who their names are inactive on our forms still. They can't really vote because they need to be able to come to the polls and prove that they actually still live in Hopkinton. But
Right. Is that one of the main reasons why you do a yearly census?
yes, so we're required to, by state law, to do an annual census of all of the residents in town.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if they're voting age or not. If they live in town and this is where they're counting as their residence, then we use it to keep track of population. It helps with deciding how much funding we end up getting from state and federal government. It's really important to make sure that we keep track of those numbers. And also it helps with making sure that when those federal census come up, we can actually use that data to help the Census Bureau get more accurate information.
Okay. So if somebody's moving, should they, I don't know, go unenroll or just not responding to the census? Well, because let's say they move to another town, right? And they want to start voting there. Do they have to say goodbye to you and hello to the new place? Or how do you find
it depends where they're moving to. So if they're going to move, so if someone was living over on Main Street and they're like, okay, I'm going to be moving over to Milford. They go to move to Milford and they register to vote there. Then the system will send me a notice letting me know that they're going to be registering there and to remove them from my list.
Oh, no kidding.
So statewide it works well.
Yeah.
when you move out of state, or if you don't register right away in your new town, then you might stick around a little bit longer.
Okay.
If you move out of state, because we do checks pretty much once a year to try and find those duplicate voters, but it usually helps a lot more if you do something like just even give us a letter that you've then signed. We really just need to have the voter's signature in order to remove them off the list.
Okay.
So if there are specific forms for it you can do, but as long as a voter actually just signs off and says, I'd like to be removed from the voter list as I'm moving to X location, then I would just put in that the voter was removed at their own request.
Okay. What if the voter you talked about, which moved to Milford, doesn't register to vote? Do you still get a ding?
So if they don't register to vote, then there's no duplicate record, and so then it doesn't actually create a ding in the record system. So what ends up happening there is, most other towns will try to do different methods of getting people registered to vote. I know whenever I see someone new pop up or new respond to a census, especially if I see that they put some indication that they are a voter and they're not on my list, then I immediately send them a voter registration card and say, you should fill this out so that you can get all set to go. The RMV does catch a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Sometimes more than they actually would like to, because sometimes we get duplicate records from the RMV where nothing's changed, but the person just thought it was part of the form they had to fill out and checked it off. And so we'll get I've seen ones where I've gotten 3 different requests for a no change to a voter.
Oh, really?
And if it's no change, then we just have to reject it as a duplicate. So then nothing ends up happening with it.
Right.
But so yeah, that's it. It makes it interesting. So hopefully I know a lot of the concern with on the clerk side with automatic voter registration has just been to make sure that if those agencies like Mass Health and the RMV are going to be in charge of pretty much that whole end of it, then at the point of registration, there really needs to be some caution on checking to make sure that the person actually does live in that town somehow. There needs to be a way to check and make sure that citizenship does actually exist as well. Because we then lose control of that if they're automatically adding it to our system.
Right. So you've been our town clerk for about 2.5 years now.
Just shy of, but yes.
Were you a town clerk anywhere before that?
I was not. I just I started after doing a stint in more of the political side of everything, campaigns and elections, causes. I had decided I wanted to do something maybe more in the in government administration. So I had found that Jerry Holland, my predecessor, was looking for some help, and I came and I worked in her office for just under a year.
Oh, okay.
And I had stopped in November, and she had retired that December. And so that's when I had announced interest in running, and here I am, still here.
Right. So the reason I was asking is because how do you know all this stuff? Do you have to go to town clerk class?
So a lot of it is information that you can't quite know when you just go in. I did gain a lot from being able to be in that office before. And then with my background, I am entirely kind of focused, even through my educational career, in being based on civics, politics, government, and those help me kind of gain that information a little bit faster. But we also do have both regional and state associations for the town clerks, and so I take classes at conferences that I go to, and I go with my assistant, and we make sure to get over to these conferences, and we learn the things that are ever changing in the world of town clerks.
Right. Now, are those separate? Are those a state-run thing, or are those just separate?
So it's run by the Mass Town Clerks Association.
Okay, which is that a state organization, or is that kind of like a membership organization?
It's a membership organization. Yeah, it's more of a membership organization like that. It's not run by the state, but the state is very supportive of it. They often send a lot of their own professionals from the Secretary of State's office to come and join us and help conduct some of the classes, especially those in regards to changing election laws and things like that.
Yeah.
But other than that, I also have gone to, there's an amazing program that is run by the International Institute of Municipal Clerks. It's run regionally, and that's right up, and it's held every year in Plymouth, New Hampshire.
Okay.
And that handles all the clerks from around New England.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the New England Municipal Clerks Institute and Academy. And so I had actually just graduated the program up at the Institute just this July.
Okay.
And I started July 2 months after my election. And so it's a 3-year program that you go through.
Yeah.
And it's definitely an interesting experience. And I would say it's helped me become an even better clerk, and I'm glad that I've been able to take that, and that both the town and the residents, the rest of the administration have been supportive in having me do that as well.
Right. That's got to be a never-ending learning process, because everything's always changing.
It really is, and that's actually part of the thing that I love about it.
Yeah.
Is it's never the same thing. It's always changing, and I love to adapt. I love the experience of, okay, we have a new problem. How are we going to adapt to this and make it better so that it doesn't look like anything's ever changed for the people who are used to just coming in and getting things done.
Right, right. So in the past 2.5 years that you've been involved, almost like 3.5 years really, because you were working under Jerry Holland as well, how has the town grown that you've been seeing?
I think that just in the time that I've been in, we've seen a big change in demographics. I think it's been slower, but it's really picked up as well. There's a lot more folks from different diverse backgrounds, and honestly, that's great because we're still seeing people who are coming in who they want to be involved in town.
Yeah.
And that's the really important part. And I've had some folks who they might have just moved from other states, where they don't have the town meeting form of government, and they'll come up and they want to ask me about what does it entail, what do we have to do to be involved in it, and that just sends me over the moon when I hear people wanting to know more about town meeting and wanting to know more about how they can get involved.
Right.
Because it's just the best thing that you can hope for is to maintain that perfect form of democracy, is to really make sure that people stay interested in it.
Right. And honestly, I think that must be one of the big challenges of your job, because, there's a fair amount of paperwork and, dates and numbers and things like that. But also, that is the face that is representing how our democracy works and how our town runs. And I think that when I talk to you, I really get the passion, behind the position that you do. But that must be a challenging concept to try to spread throughout the town.
Well, thank you for saying so, by the way, first. But it can be. There's a lot of, I think, political exhaustion right now with all the stuff that's been going on nationally, especially over the past few years.
Yeah.
It's tired a lot of people out. And it's important that, especially for the local stuff, we really need to make sure that people stay interested and keep wanting to run for positions, or even just volunteer for appointed positions, step up and become an election worker, anything. There's all sorts of opportunities available for those who are looking.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that's great about Hopkinton that makes it feel like such a cute New England small town, is that's the mentality we have. We're a small town, our population's growing, but we still have people who are passionate about volunteering their own time to make sure that this town keeps running.
Right.
And we have a lot of dedicated staff as well to help them do that in a way that's most efficient.
Right. We just got a few moments left. I just wanted to ask you, is there anything on the ballots this year, the primary or the November ballot? Are there any that you know about, any issues or questions that are coming up beyond just voting for your candidate?
So I don't remember off the top of my head, but I do know that we do have referenda that were just announced for the November election. I believe it's going to be 3 different questions. And other than that, we have a pretty full slate, with this being kind of the midterms, as most people call it, coming up in November.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of races going on there, and very few of them are uncontested.
Okay.
So, and some of them actually, if you're interested in looking at it, the primary itself, a lot of the races will end up being decided in the primary.
Okay.
If there's only a Democrat running, but there happens to be 2 or 3 of them running for the same spot,
Yeah.
and there's no Republican, then
Yeah.
it's pretty much decided once you get to the primary.
I see.
And I know the other ballot that we have this year is the Libertarian ballot. They're the other party according to the current enrollment rates.
Yep.
And they do have one position that has someone running in our district
Okay.
for state auditor.
Cool. All
So
right.
we have, all the ballots have something on. No blank ballots this year.
All right. Hey, well, Connor, thank you very much for coming down and joining us for a new episode of Catching Up with Connor. And thank you for joining us for this program and hearing about the latest events and activities at the town clerk's office. For more information about Connor and his department, visit the town's website, give him a call, or drop by Town Hall. For more information concerning All About Hopkinton, find us at hcam.tv. If you or someone you know is having an impact on our community, we want to hear about it. Send us an email. Perhaps you'll find them sharing their story right here on All About Hopkinton. Sitting in for Mary Arnott, I'm Jim Cousins, and thanks for watching.
Have you ever considered texting and driving? If so, you should know the consequences. If caught texting and driving for the first time, you could get an $100 fine plus your license taken away for 60 days. The consequences only get worse the more you get caught. Even if you don't get caught, there could be serious effects. You could get into a car accident and hurt yourself or someone else. Texting and driving is a very dangerous combination, so stop before this happens to you.